Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Jasmine. I really appreciate the invitation to come to CasaCon again this year. Last year, I gave a panel on post-apocalyptic scenarios in video games. So this year's panel, Dark Tourism in Japan, is going to be something of an outgrowth of that. Literally, I'll be talking about ruins and plants. Hopefully this will be a little bit more, I guess, peaceful than a post-apocalyptic scenarios. And I'm generally going to be talking about culture and fiction. So no tips on how to trespass on forbidden spaces in this panel, unfortunately. So I am a lecturer of Japanese studies at the University of Pennsylvania, where I teach classes about Japanese fiction and media and video games often. So next semester, I'm offering a course called Animals in Nature in Japan, which is going to be an academic deep dive into how human society has affected the environment and the natural world in Japan from, I'd say, the beginning of the 19th century to the present. So what I'm presenting in my panel today is a little bit of the research I've done for this class. And I'm going to be talking about what dark tourism is, how it exists in the United States, how it's developed in Japan, and how it can kind of change the ways that we think about how we move through our spaces, urban and otherwise. So thank you again for inviting me. I should say that this is the end of the semester for me. So I have a little bit of a brain fog and a little bit of a cold, but thank you for joining me. Um, so I am going to share my screen and bring up my PowerPoint. So hopefully you can see my slides. Okay. Um, so let me begin by introducing this idea of dark tourism. What you're seeing here is a photo of a bunch of, I would assume by their blue jeans and their polo shirts, I would assume it's a bunch of Americans taking selfies at Pompeii, which is one of the sites of the greatest disasters of the ancient world. So as you'll see from the backpacks and sun hats and fanny packs, this is recreational for most people who engage in the practice, even though it refers to visiting places associated with death and war and disaster. So there are many such ruins and places of death in Europe. Um, Let me see. Here we go. So one of my favorites and one of the things that pops up at the top of Google if you search for dark tourism is the Sedlik ossuary in the Czech Republic, which is, I guess, which is under a cathedral that's more than 1,000 years old. They had some soil taken from Jerusalem in the Crusades that was enshrined here, and so everybody wanted to be buried here. So the basement was just filled with human remains. So at the start of the 19th century, they hired somebody to come in and clean everything up. And so what he did ended up being a little bit much, a little bit overboard, and he created this art installation out of human bones. So the chandelier, for example, contains every bone in the human skeleton. So this is another example of dark tourism. You can perhaps see with your own eyes the association with death. And this isn't just out of the way cathedrals in the Czech Republic. This is also, for example, one of the most popular tourist destinations in the city of Paris. So the Paris catacombs, which stretch completely underneath the city for miles, is a popular tourist attraction that contains the remains of over 6 million people. And the remains form the walls and even the ceilings and the floor of many areas of this tunnel. Parts of it are able, I guess, to, for a hefty fee of euros, be visited by you and your loved ones. And many of it much of it is off limits. So you have to figure out a way to go down there yourself, which people often do. In my home city of Philadelphia, there's the Eastern State Penitentiary, which was in operation from 1829 to 1971. It's the first modern prison. It was considered to be a groundbreaking work of social progress in its time. However, when you go in there, it's pretty creepy, and they haven't done a lot to maintain it to, let's say, modern standards. This is a place I'd say where a lot of people suffered, some quite needlessly, but it's become a tourist attraction. And every Halloween they put on like a bunch of haunted houses, and they employ a bunch of local art students. It's a big deal. It's a lot of fun, and despite the grimness of the situation, I'd highly recommend coming down here for Halloween if you get the chance. So I so those are traditional sites of dark tourism, but in the 21st century, there have started to be more sites that are less about dark tourism and more about urban exploration, especially as many regions in the United States become depopulated. So it's not just rural regions that are losing people; it's also suburbs. So you have in the Rust Belt, especially from Baltimore to Detroit, you have a lot of suburbs that are losing populations and everything that goes along with them, from post offices to hospitals to even the bastion of American capitalism. These shopping malls are just completely abandoned. So even though it's technically breaking and entering to go into a lot of these, people do, they post YouTube videos, and they are fairly popular and they're quite relaxing. So a lot of people use abandoned mall walkthroughs as a kind of ASMR to help them go to sleep at night. Just listening to all of the crunching of the glass in the floor and like the howling of the wind through the abandoned like Hot Topic or whatever. As you take these kind of pleasurable strolls through, I guess, abandoned sites in American infrastructure. So I do want to say that rural depopulation is an issue that faces every post-industrial country. The United States is no exception. So I took this photo myself somewhere in Western Pennsylvania. I could not tell you where, but it's an issue in Europe and it's an issue in Japan as well. So Japan is facing right now a demographic shift. So what's happening is the birth rate is getting smaller, while I guess the population is in general getting older. So what this results in is the fewer young people who are born leave rural areas to move to the cities, and you have a lot of rural areas becoming ghost towns. Um, and in addition to young people leaving, immigration in Japan is something of a contentious political issue, as it is everywhere in the world. So there aren't a lot of immigrant workers, or I guess new people coming in to revitalize local industries, especially in traditionally agricultural areas. So especially in the northeast of Japan, in the what's called the Tohoku region, you see even an hour and a half outside of Tokyo, you'll just see these empty train stations that are no longer operational, and you'll run by these like hospitals and schools and like post offices, and even entire towns that have been just completely abandoned due to rural depopulation. So one of the ways that the Japanese government has tried to bring life back into these depopulated regions is say, look, this is where traditional Japan is. You can go to these old places, these old villages in the north of Japan. You can walk through mossy gardens and beautiful green trees, eat delicious natural food, and just really experience traditional Japanese culture. So these are, I guess, promotions that are for domestic tourists, people from within Japan who are encouraged to leave Tokyo or Osaka for the weekend and go visit rural areas and spend money there. There are also even these kind of smaller cities like Kyoto, which are gradually losing their population due to the shifting demographics. You've got these cities advertising themselves as tourist destinations as well. So the city of Kyoto used to be a big university town where young people would just come I guess, at the beginning of every school year in April, flood the town with their hopes and dreams. But now, because a lot of colleges are shutting down because there are fewer students to enroll, now Kyoto is trying to keep these businesses and these neighborhoods alive by saying, leave Tokyo and come here for the weekend as a tourist getaway. So I guess Aomori Prefecture in northern Japan has become one of the main sites of domestic tourism. And what's really interesting about this is because of the extreme rural depopulation, a lot of it is what we might call dark tourism. So visiting ghost towns, visiting abandoned structures. Also visiting these temples on kind of the fringes of Japanese civilization in the north that celebrate these kind of this is the end of the world. This is how far civilization goes. So one of the most famous tourist destinations is Osorezan or Mount Fear, which is a Soto Buddhist temple. Oh, oops, please forgive me. Okay, click. All right, which is a Soto Buddhist temple, which was built in a volcanic caldera. With all of these hot springs, all of this rising mist, all of these sulfurous fumes, and it was believed to be a gateway between this world and the next world. So this is where you would go traditionally before the 20th century in Japan. If you really felt strongly about the death of a loved one and you wanted to go see them off one last time before they crossed the river between life and death, which is quite, I would say, sweet in some ways and morbid in others. But now I think people are within Japan at least celebrating this tradition as a tradition, saying, "Oh, this is what Japanese life was like before everybody had their Game Boys and their cell phones." So what you'll see all over this region are these little Jizo statues. Jizo being a bodhisattva who has vowed never to attain enlightenment until he helps all of the lost souls cross over into the afterlife. So what you see in all of these mountain passes and mossy temples are rows of Jesus statues that people love to take photos of because they're quite picturesque. But the thing about Jesus statues is they generally mark a place where there was a terrible accident that happened. And something like people got lost in the mountains, there was an animal attack, there was an avalanche, there was a landslide, there was an earthquake. Something happened, bodies couldn't be recovered, and so Jesus statues would be erected to help people move on. So this is Jesus statues are of course all around Japan. And so generally what you're seeing when you see a bunch of these statues is this is a site where something happened. So that is, I'd say, traditional dark tourism in Japan. Go out to the mountains, go out to the fields, go out to these abandoned hospitals and so on and so forth, and enjoy the local nature, enjoy the local cuisine. But in the 21st century, as people have, I guess, lost a lot of the disposable income to do domestic tourism, you're getting people who are going out to the country and looking at things for free, even if technically they really shouldn't be. So what used to be this kind of spiritually tinged tourism in the 20th century in Japan has become this phenomenon of haikyo kensaku, or ruins investigation, where people will just go out to depopulated areas, look at abandoned apartment complexes, and decide to just go on in and see what's there. So there are many popular sites for doing this. In the north of Japan, instead of going to someplace like Osorezan, these days people go to these abandoned amusement parks. So one of the more famous of which is Blood Kingdom in the northern island of Hokkaido. It was meant to represent this sort of late 19th century Austrian splendor. You don't actually have to go to Europe. You can just go to this Europe themed amusement park and get the next best thing. However, as people stopped being able to travel so frequently and as rural depopulation progressed, this became a ruin. It shut down, and now all of these castles are, I wouldn't say free to go in for anyone, but nobody's going to stop you. So it's not just the north that's depopulated, it is the south and the west as well. So you have, I guess, these smaller 20th century amusement parks that just shut down when there were no longer any children. And of course, there are all sorts of urban legends that spring up around places like this. So another famous site of urban exploration is the Nakagasuku Hotel in Okinawa, which began construction in 1975 but was never completed, probably because construction lagged behind the event. It was a maritime world expo that was supposed to attract a bunch of visitors in 1976. The event came and went, but the hotel wasn't completed. So then there was no longer any reason for this hotel to exist. So there it sits. Um, so there are, of course, urban legends like, oh, the land is cursed. There were so many construction workers who perished because of safety hazards on the site. So if you go in there, you might see a ghost. But really, most of it has been torn down in the 21st century. And if you go in there, I think maybe you'll see some interesting graffiti and get tetanus. I'm not sure. Uh, but there are also, as well as these kind of big budget government spending projects that sort of failed or never materialized, you also have relics of the 20th century that exist kind of in the outlying islands close to major cities in Japan that I guess are part of 20th century history that's no longer relevant. So there is the Fuchu abandoned U.S. Air Force Base off the coast of Tokyo Prefecture, and you can go in there if you're brave and get all sorts of 1950s, actually U.S. nostalgia. Or off the coast of Nagasaki, there is an entire abandoned mining island called Ikeshima, where it has the barracks and also the industrial equipment, and also all sorts of like fun, kind of like amusement park looking pipes and ladders and chutes and stuff like that you can see just completely overgrown with plants and vines. So if you're interested in finding these places, how do you do that? So Google Maps is a great resource, and there are all sorts of apps that you can get for iOS and Android, and even on your desktop. One of my favorites is the Ruined Japan haikyo map, which works for Android, which allows you to sort of play around on Google Maps and see what's closest to you. And there are all sorts of like photos and information and health hazards that will help you navigate these urban exploration sites, generally right in the middle of the city. So the one that you're seeing here is an abandoned apartment complex right around Ueno, which is an extremely densely populated area of Tokyo. If you don't speak Japanese, there are all sorts of kind of underground foreign agencies that have websites and offer guides to places like abandoned hotels or abandoned I guess, school buildings. So if you ever had an anime fantasy of going to high school in Japan, but also it's post-apocalyptic, you can book a tour to go see that yourself. So I'd say that outside of Tokyo and depopulated areas, there's urban exploration is thriving, it's strong as well. But there's what's interesting is that as the demographics of Tokyo change, you're also getting entire neighborhoods of central Tokyo that just have businesses closing and people move away as the population gets older. So one of my favorite photographers goes by Tokyo Times underscore Lee on Instagram, and he likes to walk around these old neighbors of Tokyo and just take photos of sort of what remains after about 3 decades of economic depression. So what you're seeing here is a covered shopping arcade where it would have been lined with businesses, even about 10 to 15 years ago, but now everything is closed and falling apart. So there are all sorts of sites, even next to tourist destinations, like the Tokyo Sky Tree that you can see in the background, that add just a little bit of picturesque beauty to the landscape. And I think whereas people would have torn down houses like this, again, 15, 20 years ago, now they tend to sit abandoned because the funding for new people to buy them and contribute to the deconstruction efforts has vanished. So what is the appeal of this? I think it's sort of if life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Sort of. Well, actually, having this lovely outgrowth of plants in the city is a lovely thing to look at and walk by and photograph. But I think there's also a little bit of cultural nostalgia at play. So recently, in the Japanese magazine Aeon, which was reprinted in The Guardian, I guess Japanese pop culture expert Matt Alt recently came out with an article called "The Joy of Clutter." The world sees Japan as a paragon of minimalism, but its hidden clutter culture shows that more can be magical as less. So this is a celebration of a lot of the 20th century spaces in Japan that have been left behind by the progress of the 21st century. So of course, cultural nostalgia is something that exists everywhere. So I'm taking this graphic from an article about cultural nostalgia in the New York Times. What it is essentially is a longing for a past that was considered to be more simple and healthy and wholesome and connected to fond memories of childhood. Even for a lot of kids, if they didn't live through that childhood themselves. So, for example, on TikTok, just this past summer, there was a 1990s revival, I guess celebrated by a lot of kids who were born in the 2000s and never would have seen the 90s for themselves. So, what theorists say about cultural nostalgia is that it becomes a major cultural trend during periods of prolonged economic depression. So, this is partially because media corporations want to make safe bets instead of risky investments. So, instead of coming out with a new intellectual property, we'll just make a live action version of the Little Mermaid or The Lion King, or we'll come out with a new Star Wars TV series. So something that I'm not going to focus on too much in this presentation is it's also associated with analog horror, things like the backrooms, urban legends, creepypasta, and I guess these ghost stories of a time before technology existed. So we have this right now in the United States as well. And one could say that it's really started in the late 20th century and never gone away. To give an example, here's Main Street USA and Disneyland in California, which celebrates a version of America that perhaps existed in the 40s and 50s, but I think we'd be hard pressed to find now. So we can sort of go to Disneyland and enjoy this fantasy of America as it once was. So in Japan, in the same way, there are all sorts of amusement parks. I guess sort of like Disneyland has become for adults, where your job is to eat and to drink and enjoy the nostalgia of an earlier time. So you may notice a difference between the 1950s of America and the fantasy 1950s of Japan, which had just come out of the Pacific War. But the appeal of the cultural nostalgia is still there. So my one recommendation, if you want to sort of go to a culturally nostalgic, almost dark tourism style of crumbling 20th century Japan, is Namko Namja Town in Ikebukuro, which is a retro food amusement park. So you can go, you can drink, you can eat. And it's generally adults who go there just to kind of enjoy the vibes, I guess. So um, what we have is kind of saying, well, this is how it is. We might as well enjoy it. We've got some cultural nostalgia, but then there's also this sheer joy of urban exploration, seeing something that perhaps you weren't meant to see, not being surrounded by people, but being able to take a nice holiday away from civilization while still enjoying the labors of humankind. So I guess urban exploration is a major genre in contemporary Japanese anime and manga. So I'm going to recommend three of my favorite manga that have been translated. Number one is Touring After the Apocalypse, which is where a human girl and her android companion ride around various tourist destinations in post-apocalyptic Tokyo. They see all sorts of animals and they just really enjoy the scenery. And they consult reference materials that say, in the 21st century, this is what, for example, Akihabara was like. This is what Shibuya was like. It's not scary. It's surprisingly wholesome. So for even more wholesome vibes is Yokohama Kaidashi Kiko. Um, which is about an android who goes around the Yokohama Bay area, which has largely been flooded, and she just basically does side quests. It's super chill, super relaxing, super, I guess, gentle art. On the other end of the spectrum is Heavenly Delusion, which reminds me of Akira in a lot of ways, where these two, I guess, teenagers, young adults, I should say, ride around post-apocalyptic Japan and get in situations. So Heavenly Delusion is if you're into action, if you're into seinen, if you're into more adult themes, it's got that for you, but it also has these really beautiful architectural illustrations and sort of, I guess, projections of what Tokyo would look like 10 to 30 years after an apocalypse. So I also want to recommend some manga, or excuse me, some anime. These also exist in other media forms, but I just really like the anime versions. So from about 10 years ago is Capellion, which is three cute high school girls go into post-apocalyptic Tokyo, explore, do rescue missions, and question their own humanity. How are they able to survive when everyone else is gone? So there's a bit of a mystery there. If you're into the cute girls doing cute things in the apocalypse aspect, Girls Last Tours is really a visually beautiful anime that is not set in Tokyo, but in these kind of post-industrial ruins. That's just there for the beauty of the art and for the sort of elegy of a lost civilization. So if you don't want a Japan flavored version of this, Sound of the Sky is the more another cute girls doing cute things. It's got a little bit of a military theme, but mostly it's just let's go to fantasy Europe and explore all of these beautiful European unions after the apocalypse, while having a beautiful soundtrack, I guess. So something a little bit more recent, based on a video game property. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed the Nier Automata anime. It's about all sorts of things, but what I took away from it is just these beautiful robots get to enjoy beautiful scenery and wonder what happened to humankind. So on the kind of chiller end of the spectrum is my beloved Mamoru Hosoda's 2012 film Wolf Children Ami and Yuki, about a single mother who takes her two infant children or two toddler children to this kind of dying town in rural Japan and creates a new life for them there while gradually restoring agricultural lands in an old traditional farmhouse. So this is something that during the 2010s and to the present, a lot of areas of rural Japan have been banking on. They say, well, instead of becoming ghost towns, maybe we can take advantage of this haikyo exploration, this dark tourism boom. We can offer these lovely Airbnbs and old properties so that you can come stay in a traditional farmhouse out in the mountains. You can enjoy what's called forest bathing. You can take in some nice sunlight, some nice forest, while also maybe going next door to the abandoned post office if you would like to. So this is out in the country, and even closer to big cities, these depopulated areas are rebranding themselves as kind of like culturally nostalgic tourist theme parks. So let's let all of the old buildings rot. Let's let the trees grow, and let's turn this into a park where people can come visit, and all of the older people who live there will have a source of income. So what's interesting is that this idea of, well, if we can't stem the tide of rural depopulation and kind of urban decay, maybe we can work with it, has spread from Japan to various places in Europe and even the United States. So there are a bunch of people who have studied, I guess, urban agriculture and sort of urban renewal in places like Japan and a kind of rural Germany have come back to the United States and are trying to, I guess, gentrify is the wrong word, but sort of renew their I guess crumbling neighborhoods in on the outskirts of American cities. So whether it's Philadelphia or whether it's Cleveland, these sites of urban exploration have become these experimental laboratories for new technologies that can help make cities cleaner and greener and more comfortable for the population that remains. So what I want to end on is a meditation on ruins, sort of why they appeal to us, besides the cultural nostalgia, besides the sheer spectacle of it. So I drew a lot from Susan Stewart's academic monograph, The Ruins Lesson, Meaning and Material in Western Culture, where she posits that ruins are not quite what they once were, but they're also not quite destroyed. They've lost their original purpose, which turns them almost into artwork. And so, unlike artwork that is kind of traded between the ultra wealthy, this is something that everyone has access to. Anyone can see it, anyone can just go there, and you don't need to worry about the prestige of who painted it or what gallery it was exhibited in. So really these representations of ruins, whether they exist in real life or whether they exist in anime or manga or video games or what have you, they kind of offer a sort of elegy to these places and the people they live there. So ruins have become something that's not sad necessarily, but rather just another type of art that you can go and see and appreciate as you meditate on whatever they mean to you and take some nice chill vibes away from, I guess, the hustle and bustle of contemporary society. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.